Hello. I think the cook owner of my local Caribbean thinks I'm a scientist. Not literally, of course. We should probably set the scene. 2026 AD, social atomization has had 58 years, measuring from May 1968, of total domination. London is a barren wasteland, complete with upper middle class clothing stores and fast casual international restaurant chains, no doubt, but emaciated and impoverished at the level of sociality. So much so the only correct descriptor must be wasteland. Baudrillard speaks of the disquieting strangeness of the desert and of the simulacrum, with all the veracity of living phantoms, of wandering and simulating animals that the death of capital, which is simultaneously its apogee, has made of us, because the desert of cities is equal to the desert of sand, the jungle of signs is equal to that of forests, the vertigo of simulacra is equal to that of nature when we go outside. Only the vertiginous seduction relating to vertiginous, of a dying system remains. We're inundated with our technologies, and we're mithridatized. We digress. A bewildered and mithridatized generation, sandwiched between the internet definitions of millennial and Gen X, born around what could be said to be the system's perfecting moment, whilst simultaneously its biggest crisis, 2008, not to mention 2001, have flocked to a suburban area of far northeast London. Nice, newish builds loom over a large arterial A-road. Graffitied boarding placed around a brownfield site opposite sits right up against the side of the pavement on that side. No coincidence, we are at the very edge of this warehouse factory centre come clean grunge two-bed flats known as Hackney Wick. Not even there really, the edge of Fish Island, which it should be noted borders the A12 Blackwall Tunnel approach on one side, instead of water. A bridge crossing to gritty yet gentrifying Roman Road in Bow is all that separates 30-year-old semi-hipster weed smokers from 40-year-old job-seeker mothers of 3 weed smokers. This is my flat, this is what's on the menu-ish, this is the bridge to Bow, this is really Hackney Wick proper, this dotted red outline is Fish Island, this goes to Stratford, this is the Olympic Park, this is the canal my flat looks over and it's pivoted around here so you can see Hackney Wick a bit, and this is to Poplar, and so on. Blackwall Tunnel approach here defines one of the boundaries of Fish Island, and then the canal and the River Lea defines the rest. Please don't find me. But that's also just part of my imagination, actually. The weed smoking. The folk in this area are scrubbed clean, living their best and blandest middle-class Instagram aesthetic. No weed here, not really. It resembles the Netherlands in that regard. Of course, you get away with smoking whilst you walk down the canal sides, say, but there's might be the strange air of judgment from the odd neo-hipster, as if you're blowing smoke into their perfectly framed reel. My flat looks out on the canal and London Stadium, but it's pivoted slightly so you can see Hackney Wick easily. The warm glow of orange globe floor lamps and the calm pastels of plant-potted greenery reign supreme amongst the slightly varied brickwork apartment blocks. Hipster houseboats, a couple lined with fairy lights, are parked peacefully but as if in a traffic jam, up alongside the corrugated iron canal wall. In the distance to the right, one can see trains approaching Stratford Station, their screeching dissipating into a light breeze by the time they reach our balcony. It'd be eerily quiet this summer evening, if not for the chirping of the birds in the canopies hanging near the canal. But you hear whispers of yells and screams in the air here. Maybe they blend with the mew of a gull, or the odd distant screeching, or the whir of some old industrial engine coming from some back-end warehouse still existing near the stadium, but under it all, the faint hum of the inhuman. Could that be an argument between a white couple in the distance? But that would be too specific. It's more like the sound of a croaking and dying sociality, the sound of a late-stage waning of historicity, the sound of humanity's slow disappearance into what Sartre called the practico-inert, that stuff of the spreading tendrils of capital. Where were we? Yes, as I just discovered, thanks to some loud and excited old-timers who came in at closing time the other day, yelling, "Yo, Ish man, what's good man?" The title of his restaurant is eponymously named and not a Caribbean inflection of sorts as I'd originally thought. Ish thinks I'm a scientist. It's ironic really, he sits right on the geographical edge we were talking about. between deterritorialized upper middle class children of neoliberalism, of which no doubt he rightfully sees me as, and those who the system more or less left behind to create their own communities amongst council housing middle grounds. I quote the aforementioned because it's all of us that have been left destitute and impoverished by this system really, regardless of our material reality. Easy for me to say, I suppose, is the old kicker, but at this point one would certainly benefit from viewing every antagonism between strata of society as arising from coldly engineering capital. This joint, a word I would thoroughly hesitate to use under normal circumstances due to my south suburb accent, is parked right at the back of a small open complex, strewn with old machinery, junk, and a rusted jerk grill outside of Ish's place, of destitute and desolate buildings. At the front, though, off to the side, is the seemingly flourishing and ostensibly all-black New Bethel Revival Ministry International Church. No doubt he's busy on Sundays. The restaurant itself opens through a grimy door with a permanently stuck handle and an old-school digital bell notifier hooked up to it so Ish knows you've arrived. Through there, a tiny and derelict corridor, toilet to the left, and parallel with the length of the corridor to the right, a small slidable service window giving an occluded view of the front third of the kitchen, stuffed with pots, pans, old packaging boxes for giant rice cookers and shipments of plantain, and a huge refrigeration unit. A colourful and abstract mural, done in that signature blue-orange gradient, with the restaurant logo as its centrepiece, is patterned on the same wall the window is cut into. One can peek down to see Ish's desk, where he takes contactless payments on his phone, which never has enough signal to work properly the first time, and scribbles letters and words on notepads to remind himself of queued up phone orders. Leaning on a classic white corrugated radiator opposite the window whilst one waits for Ish to finish up, one can find leaflets stuffed behind the bars of the frosted windows for various local services. A penalty charge notice lawyer, a man with a van solution, a braiding and styling hairdresser. Ish had a penalty charge notice on his desk once, which I thought funny, if not thought-provoking. This culture, or rather a total lack thereof, of constant surveillance and cataloguing that we live under, of precisely calculated penalties and fines, must be totally foreign to anyone who grew up with, actual community. Presumably you would possibly be able to park your car sensibly and not run into issues if you were friendly with everyone within the mile radius. I wouldn't be surprised if the narrative here entails a small and quiet revolution from this dispossessed community, offspring of the Windrush generation maybe, a refusal to capitulate in the subtle ways that actually keep us from ossifying under such a silently oppressive system. It feels like a crime to even begin to talk about authenticity when it comes to this place. Only because it's one of the last outposts anywhere that brutally highlights how authenticity is not a thing that you do at all, not something that you can refer to, but rather can only be defined as a distinct lack of pomp, show, and branding. You can't even read half the original PDF menu found on Google, and the in-person one pasted up on the wall is no better with its diabolical colour scheme and sprawling map of asterisks and qualifiers. The official website on maps leads to a defunct domain, even though they are alive and well at whatsonthemenuish.co.uk. The logo isn't particularly recognisable or minimalist, but it's full of flair and, well, authenticity. That refusal to accommodate what exactly? Capital. Advertising, in the broadest sense. In the broadest sense. The demands of the aestheticised landscape of our modern reality. The jungle of simulacra that Baudrillard was referring to. Today, what we are experiencing is the absorption of all virtual modes of expression into that of advertising. All original cultural forms, all determined languages are absorbed in advertising because it has no depth. It is instantaneous and instantaneously forgotten. Triumph of superficial form, of the smallest common denominator of all signification. Degree 0 of meaning, triumph of entropy over all possible tropes. Although there is allegedly an upstairs area to dine in, the Food Standards Agency even classes them as a takeaway sandwich shop though. This mythical third space has and will likely continue to elude my grasp for the time being, whilst I work on precisely being less of a scientist. Speaking of, the glass service window certainly doesn't help to create a mental space where I feel like I can connect on a personal level, but I particularly, more so Ish, won't let anything stop us, and even if he's in the back 2/3 of the kitchen, finishing up my meal on the grill, we'll sometimes have our shouting match conversations through the open hole. As for the food, I'll say this much. It's good. It's it. You just know it's it, not the reconstitution, not the artificial resurrection. The food reflects the unsullied purity of the place itself as we've been discussing it, not slathered with some distinct and loud flavour defined by lab coat-wearing focus group scientists, nor rolling off the factory line under the guise of authentic branding, but cooked and seasoned in such a unique yet subtle way that it can only be the product of the original, the culture, that produced these dishes spontaneously in the first place. Ish is one of the last, when he really shouldn't be, of a certain type of human, namely Homo sapiens itself. Wisdom, also known as sapience, is defined by psychologists as the ability to apply expert, tacit, and experiential knowledge. Tacitness, experience, the stuff that can't be labelled. Authenticity, presence, flow state, meditation. These are all necessarily positive words, because all words are positive, we use in an attempt to describe a lack, which is why they end up taking on the characteristic of cringe naivety so easily. And lack not in the sense of a missing trait, but rather in the sense of a secretive and symbolic order, of an order of restrained initiation and ritualistic fervour, of seduction and reversibility. An order that the churchgoers feel in the Holy Ghost, no doubt, an order that cannot be confirmed and denied, and because of this cannot be described and circulated through our fibre optics. The continuation of great culture does not take place through the handing down of documentation and white papers, or YouTube videos and Substack articles. It takes place through the continuation of the nothing, the space we create by giving this radical illusion that is reality its proper distance and its reverence. The sensing of this radical illusion is true intelligence, wisdom, sapience, and is the one secret that all good artists, chefs included, hold instinctively. This secret allows for the creation of a space we can channel outside of the constructs of time and history, outside of textbooks and social relations, the real, the nothing itself, the continuity of the nothing, leaves traces, and that is the way the world betrays its secret. That is the way it allows itself to be sensed, while at the same time hiding away behind appearances. The artist, too, is always close to committing the perfect crime, saying nothing. But he turns away from it, and his work is the trace of that criminal imperfection. The artist is, in Michaud's words, the one who, with all his might, resists the fundamental drive not to leave traces. Love, Ishman. You will probably hate this article since I actually barely know you, but I'll definitely be grabbing my 1-portion jerk chicken and 6 grilled wings later.